Welcome back to 10 Tenths Podcast. My name is, of course, Michael Beck. We've got Adam Nielsen and Robbie Bierhout here, as always.
Oh, I got it.
Got it right.
Got it again.
We have
See
a
if we can
couple.
keep the streak going.
We have a couple guests here today, so I can butcher some more names, I'm sure. We have Nabil Hanke. Did I get that right?
Close enough.
Okay. And Ray Scheufler.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, you
Oh,
did
man.
pronounce that right.
Good
Nice.
enough.
So, was it Nabil or Nabil?
Nabil.
Nabil. Nabil is from Electric Dream Machines. So you guys do electric car conversions.
Right.
Which is going to make for an interesting discussion because I think there's a couple of us in the room that aren't exactly electric car fans.
As you don't look away from me for 1 second as you say that.
I think
Michael, you couldn't look over there for a little bit while you said that? You
Well,
have to look right at me?
I'm not against them. I just don't want to own one yet.
so. We've decided that we were going to bring in these guys. We're going to talk to them. We're going to remain open-minded. Robbie,
I'm open-minded.
we're going to get through this discussion. We're going to see what their company's all about, and then I think after we have a little discussion, we're going to take a break because we haven't really checked out the cars yet.
So I think these guys have a better chance of swaying us because they actually use their cars like we use our cars.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I want to go back to your comment about not wanting to buy one yet. And I was actually thinking about that for a while because you made that comment at the Autocross. The problem is nobody makes an EV that is what you want in a car.
Oh, absolutely.
The Leaf is slow
Terrible.
and just not
Ugly.
a fun car.
It's not a good design either.
The i3 has some good handling and acceleration characteristics, but it's also either ugly or requires the right mindset, depending on
And
who you talk
I'm
to.
not stuck up enough to own a BMW. So-
And then you've got the Tesla Model S, which fundamentally is a luxury car, which again isn't what you're looking for.
but someone did autocross one of those last year,
They would be fun to autocross.
and it was weird. He didn't do well.
No,
Was
you
that-
wouldn't
I
do
don't-
well.
I don't know
It's
that
a
it
heavy
was-
car.
I don't know that it was as much car as it was driver.
Was that DMVR?
Iowa
SCCA?
Event Center.
He was there with that.
I think
with the
it
Tesla?
may have been 2 years ago.
Which
now.
color was it?
Aren't they all black or
Don't
blue?
remember.
No.
Doesn't-
Actually,
all I've
now
ever
there's
seen.
about
There's a
a dozen in Des
maroon
Moines.
as well.
Really?
Yeah.
So I know that whoever had it also had a C7, and his brother drove it.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
Interesting.
Now, is there a reason you left out the Tesla Roadster? Or
I
is it
don't
just 'cause
count
it's
it.
not godly
It's not a
expensive?
current production car.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And I
There is
also
what there
left.
is, and that's all there will be because they don't produce it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's rumors they're going to be doing another one.
Yeah.
I don't know why they wouldn't.
I don't know either.
I also left out a whole bunch of other MISC EVs that are only available in California because they're only available in California because of
we don't worry about
California
those.
law.
You
Like
know.
the
So-
500E. We've talked about that on the show.
have talked about the
at
500E.
least once.
Yeah, the 500E, I don't know. So a mentor of mine down in Missouri actually got a hold of a smart car that was from Daimler, and he got it dirt cheap because the battery pack was supposedly damaged. And so he got a shell.
Do they make a full electric smart car?
They made a handful of them.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. And they have no idea what to do with them because they've now stopped even offering them whatsoever. And he was approaching them to get a battery pack and even got a written letter from the head of Daimler US saying, oh, yeah, we'll provide you the information you need to build your own battery pack. Because he asked, all right, if you guys are not going to get on your game, let me, build my own.
Is he a teacher then, or like a university employee? Or usually you
eccentric
have to have
old
some
man.
sort of special
He has
reason
his
why
own
they would
charm.
respond to that.
He has his own charm. So, not to dive too far, but his name is Jack Rickard, which he made this magazine years ago called Board Watch. So back when you actually had to dial up a modem in order to connect to another computer, people had these lists of these bulletin boards they could contact, and the list was out of date. And he just decided to go ahead and update this list one day. Blew into this whole huge thing, made millions of dollars, and his current fancy is electric cars.
We need that to happen to us.
That'd be nice.
Just some stupid random thing we did, it just blows up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why
Like
can't that
this
happen to
podcast.
more people?
Yeah, and so the reality of it is that most of the electric cars that are produced or available supposedly are purely for compliance, primarily for California, and no one wants to make them. and no one really likes them all that much. I mean, you look at the announcement that Tesla did of the Model 3, and just by announcing it, hey, look, we're going to give you an opportunity to give us $1,000. Who's in? 250,000 people who could have already been buying those other cars.
But they're the trendy thing. They're like the Apple of the car world.
They kind of are, and I'm sure there are people that are wanting to get in on that so they could try to flip them. But even still, I think it's going to be an absolute monster of a car when it does deliver.
You think they're going to have a markup? Like, if you have it, you can sell it for more? Like
Initially, yeah. Really? So they are having to ramp up their production estimates dramatically. And they've already been saying they're going to focus on the coasts and then Europe and then the Midwest eventually, maybe someday. Right?
when it's convenient for them.
Right.
Oh, so they've actually said, we don't care when you or what order you reserved your
It's not
car
purely
in?
sequential. If you already have multiple Teslas, you're going to get preferential treatment. So Elon Musk, if you look into the history of Tesla, he has had to woo people regularly. And he has bought the loyalty and is not going to let it go. And
Well, yeah.
so that's life. That's business. You know, he doesn't turn away someone's money.
No, I don't blame him for that.
Right. But it does kind of suck if if you dropped your $1,000 just like somebody else, that you don't get that sequential spot in line. Exactly. It's going to be regionalized, et cetera. So because of that, I'm sure that there will be some people trying to hawk them to other territories. A friend of mine actually had to import his Model S 2 years ago to New Zealand because Tesla hadn't gotten there yet. 4 months later, they did. But he wanted his now, damn it.
So let's talk about electric dream machines. So, I mean, how in the Midwest, just being, I assume, are you an engineer? Do you have an engineering background?
I was born an engineer.
You're born an engineer?
Yep.
So what precipitates you wanting to start a company that converts normal cars to electric cars?
There's a number of different rabbit holes we could dive down, but I guess the best way to say it is that I have a fascination with electricity and magnetics. My dad had a pinball machine, he had a whole arcade actually, and I got playing around with these magnets way back in the day. And then I got an RC car, and I thought that was fun as hell. And of course, I had to get one that was a full kit so that way I could fix it when it broke. And then I saw the Who Killed the Electric Car movie that came out almost 10 years ago now.
Right.
There's
or
a
more.
movie about it?
Yeah,
like
Who Killed the Electric Car?
Documentary or something?
Yeah, documentary. Can't remember the guy's name.
That's about GM, right? I mean, that's
Primarily GM.
GM's car.
Yeah, so there was this legislation that happened in the mid-'90s that was really pushing for electric cars in California big time. Like, they were wanting to be where we are right now 15 years ago. And so there was this huge push to go ahead and get electric cars out there. And the EV1 from GM was the blockbuster. It was the sexy one. It had power. It could move. It was a cool looking car. They branded it under Saturn, and then they only leased them because as soon as they could turn the legislation, they ended the leases and crushed them all.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I kind of remember that car even now that you say it.
It was a Saturn brand. It was the coolest looking Saturn you could possibly come up with. And
I'm not sure that's much of an accomplishment.
Well, okay, I'll give you that. But yeah, so that just kind of stuck in my craw, to use a really bad colloquialism. And I was like, that kind of sucks. I wonder what it takes to make an electric car. And I found out that it's not really any more complicated than that RC car I played with when I was a kid. Just
Right.
a larger scale. It's literally a battery pack, a motor controller, a battery. Go.
Yeah, that seems fair.
So how did that actually start then? So what was the first car that you started tinkering with to convert to electric?
Well, the first vehicle, I'll put it that way, was a little Yamaha QT50.
Which is
A really ugly,
Stupid moped.
little stupid moped from the 80s. Yeah, it was awful. But that said, even with putting the wrong motor onto it that was way undersized and ended up melting it, a friend of mine used to fix those when he was younger. He was the shop rat at a local Yamaha dealer. And he was well impressed with the performance difference between the converted little Yamaha and the stock one. Now, again, it's a POS, but whatever. It was still an improvement, okay? And so that was the first one. And then the first real car
How long ago was that? If you know, how long ago was that?
5 years ago.
Okay.
About. The first real car was the Porsche that I have now, which has its own story. So it was a 944 turbo that the owner got from his dad. It was bought brand new, included the club package, which is the ramped up suspension and all that. So that's all original and in there still. And the turbo started going out. He lives here in Des Moines. There wasn't a Porsche dealer. No one could service him. So he's like, forget this. He liked electric cars. So he jumped on the internet. And this was 5-6 years ago. I didn't know him whatsoever, okay? He found this guy down in Florida to convert it for him. So he sent his car off to Florida. The guy did the conversion. And a couple of years later, the lead batteries that were in it were crapped out. It would not move. And then connected with me, and I was starting up this business. I'm like, hey, I want to do this. And a friend of his said, hey, I've met this guy, da-da. And the intent was to just upgrade the batteries. That was it. Just touch the batteries, nothing else. The only thing I haven't touched yet is the motor mount bolts. I had to redo the whole conversion for performance and safety reasons.
So it was done pretty poorly by the...
It was done complete but poorly. There was no pride in the workmanship whatsoever. When we were pulling the batteries out, they were in order to fit them all in, there were multiple layers, and the second layer down, my dad was helping me. He went to go grab the cable to kind of move it around so he could grab onto the whole battery to lift it out, and the cable just lifted right off of the terminal of the drive motor.
Oh, jeez.
Or drive battery, yeah. So that's just one thing. He also neglected to put a tachometer input on or sensor on the motor itself. This is a motor that redlines at 5,500 RPM. And you cannot hear it spinning up because you're in the passenger compartment. It's not. And he's like, whatever. If it blows up, you know. So I had to add that.
And the speedometer didn't work.
Yeah, so the DME, the computer from the car, came out with the engine, which purportedly is now in a boat somewhere down in Florida. I don't know. That's one of the things that attracted me to the idea of conversions is that so much energy and resources go into building a car in the first place. Why not give it a new lease on life, you know? So that was kind of a neat idea. I've now changed my opinion on that. It's all a compromise. And so if I designed a car from scratch, ground up, it would be a way better finished product than any conversion could ever be, per se. That said, I don't like doing a conversion unless it's an improvement over stock. And that's what we certainly did with the Miata, in my opinion.
So you own the 944 now, correct?
Right, because the owner had a problem with his garage. After he bought a Tesla, the garage was too small to fit his Leaf, his Porsche, and his Tesla.
Of those three, the Porsche would not have been the one to go, I guess.
The Leaf was his wife's car. That's what she primarily drove.
She does now. Yeah. Anyway.
Did he get demoted to the Leaf?
No, God, no.
Oh.
If you bought a Tesla, it's yours.
Yeah, for sure. We haven't really met that guy, but we have seen him. He is very regular at all of the Cars and Coffees, the multiples of them here in town. And
white
we've
hair,
seen that
really
car.
cool guy.
We haven't actually had a chance to talk to him, but he does seem like a very personable, easy to approach guy. Mm-hmm.
So the 944 was the first car you did. Mm-hmm. And then was the Miata that you had, was that the next one, or?
No, the Bradley was...
Yeah, the Bradley.
Oh, yes.
The Bradley was...
They have a Bradley GT.
Oh, I have a spread. You will enjoy this. So, I don't know how I got in contact with these guys, but there was Gearbox Magazine. It was a little upstart publishing. And he did an email interview with me. And a friend of mine took some really nice photos. And so my Bradley GT2 converted to electric is on the front cover and the center spread and all through the whole magazine. It's cool. I brought it with me. I'll show you.
That would be really cool. I wouldn't be mad about that at all.
Yeah. Well, so The thing with the Bradley GT2 is it was made by a boat company who decided to turn one upside down and sit on top of a VW Bug chassis.
Yep.
Yes. No, that's the
That's
whole
all
story.
there
What
is to it. Okay.
Yeah, it's not real well built, even as far as kit cars go. It's
No.
not very good fiberglass work, frankly.
No.
And yeah, I can see
and the
that.
windshield breaks itself.
Yeah. So
Does yours
because
have doors?
yeah, yeah. Okay, so there's two versions. There's a GT and there's a GT2 because they didn't have enough of it. So the GT2 actually has sort of doors.
They're more like windows that fold up, aren't they?
Well, the GT1, the first one, has just these plexiglass like formed things that are barely even anything.
so that's what mine
actually has-
had. And it,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Adam
there was
had
a,
one.
There was a
Okay.
passenger side one, but not a driver's side one.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I'm never going to find another one of those. So.
Right. I had to make the T-top covers on my door. So I had the GT2. So they are a different car. The GT looks more like a cartoon straight out of the 70s, and the GT2 has inspirations from a variety of supercars, I should say. But the thing that really killed me was the fact that I found out that the taillights actually, honestly, are bus taillights.
Like VW microbus?
No. Like the bus
City
you rode on to
bus.
school.
Oh,
Nice.
It's like, really?
Like the Bluebird?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but so it has no structural integrity, and the back end of it is the last spot that the entire body is supported is in front of the rear wheels, and so all of that weight is pulling against the windshield, and they all crack out.
Oh my gosh.
By the way, mine's for sale.
You don't say.
After all of this, it's not
But
the
it's-
greatest car.
but I fixed
But it's
that.
for sale if you
It's
want
for
it.
sale. I upgraded the brakes. Yeah.
Oh, that was an adventure.
Yeah, so one of the Adventureland autocrossing days, it was the North 2 lots. By the time I got through the end, the original drum brakes, I didn't have any going through the end. And so I almost took out the timing and scoring trailer.
Was that probably the last event it made it to then?
It is actually, because now I have the Porsche. I was like, forget this.
I think I was there for that event, but I
Yeah.
don't remember that mishap.
Yeah. It felt like that anyway. I had no brakes, I'll tell you that.
I remember seeing that car and getting very excited about it because I was, Bradley. And
Yeah.
then when I found out it was electric, I was conflicted. I was like, is that better or is that worse? 'Cause
Oh, it's
I'm
better
not
than
an
it was,
I'm
but it
not
had
an
no
air-cooled
brakes.
fan.
It also
So-
had horrible weight distribution.
It really did. It had no weight in the front, so I was just plowing into every single corner, and there was nothing I could do. I touched the brakes to try to get some forward
transfer, weight transfer.
No, they just started sliding. My best autocrossing event was actually down in Cape Girardeau at the Electric Vehicle Conversion Convention.
It looked like he was going to flip it over on every corner. There's just so much body.
I was on
rolls,
3
like,
wheels half the entire track. I was like, I'm either going to break it, flip it, but I'm not going to be easy on it. So, yeah.
I bet that's an interesting event.
Oh, I
This
bet it is.
conversion.
Yeah, oh, it is.
Oh, yeah.
Literally international. Every year there's someone from a new country that you never would imagine. So Trinidad, New Zealand. There were 2 guys that are like 20 miles away from each other down in Australia that met there. And this is in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, on the river, middle of nowhere, effectively, halfway between Nashville, St. Louis, and somewhere else. And I don't know if they're going to continue doing it at this point, actually. But it started out, we had about 150 guys come from all over the world and a dozen or more cars of all kinds. So I want to say like a 36 Dodge Brothers pickup.
That's a bizarre one.
That's a very well done conversion.
It is.
It's very clean. He dailies it.
Yeah, he does.
Hauls his grandkids around.
Yeah. What else? There's a guy that recently did a Studebaker pickup. A couple of RX-7s, an RX-8, a Dodge Daytona, whatever.
There you go, Adam.
There we go.
See?
Yeah, front-wheel drive.
Still front wheel drive even.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, so that's the thing, is with electric conversion, you keep the transmission in, unless you're an idiot. Because it's easier.
Yeah, it would make
You make an
way
adapter
more
plate, you go on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other advantage is you have multiple gear sets to go from. So if you've ever ridden a 10-speed, you understand how valuable it is to have different gear ratios. And of course, you guys autocross, and you actually know what a transmission is for. Okay, but for anyone that doesn't understand, it's really hard to start in fourth gear, especially with a gas engine. With electric, well, you have all that torque, etc. You don't have to slip into the clutch; just put it in the fourth, and you can go. It just kind of sucks. And so that's my biggest criticism with the Leaf as a production car. It was kind of a flop. In the history books, it would be regarded as, well, maybe a footnote. But it would have been the new pocket rocket that everyone would have wanted if it would have had at least a 2-speed transmission.
Is that just like a CVT then, or
No, it's fixed
just
ratio.
Run a fixed ratio 2-speed transmission.
So
it would have been
the one that's in it now?
Oh,
Right.
no, right now it's a fixed ratio.
Right now, it's a fixed ratio.
There's just some gears. There's
So
no transmission per se. It's just a
Almost
gearbox.
like
Well,
direct drive to
It's
be
basically it's a
simple.
differential to go to the front wheels that has an inlet for the electric motor that is transverse axle. So it has some gear
Why wouldn't
reduction.
you just put some gears in?
Wasn't
it?
the original Tesla Roadster a fixed?
Yeah,
the original
no.
was, their prototyping was, they kept on blowing them up.
Right, that's what I remember.
And one of the suppliers' defense for them breaking was, well, they're supposed to.
That's supposed to be the failure point?
Yes.
Or-
No, Tesla, you should expect that these transmissions we are supplying to you will fail. And so Tesla said, forget that, we're making our own. And so that's why Teslas are single speed as well.
Oh, the S and the
single speed.
The S is a
Really?
single speed.
That's why the D designation, you got the Model S, then you have the P for power,
Yep.
then the number for the size of the battery pack.
Yep.
And then you have a D for dual motor. So the nice one right now is a P85D or P90D or something like
I
that.
think there's a 90 or
Yeah.
a 95.
I think they might be working on a 95 now too. It's not. I don't think it's out yet. But
So the way that they approach it is add more motor or go home. And so that's what they do.
So obviously the 944 and
Yep.
the Miata, which we haven't really talked about much yet, both of those still have the original manufacturer's transmissions in
Correct.
them,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
So I guess tell us more about the Miata while we're on that subject.
So the Miata started its life as a 2002 SE Mazda Miata, which means it had all of the fancy bits, the upgraded suspension, upgraded brakes, 6-speed transmission, and torsion diff. Before I acquired it, I have little to no knowledge of where its life was. There's a Virginia safety sticker on it, and it had a military health insurance form in the glove box when I got it. I bought it from Tom Kraft down on the south side. It has a salvage title on it. It was in a front end accident and the engine was dying. And I picked it up for a relatively good price, particularly because of the additional features that it had being an SE. So I got a very special color as well. It now has a Warp 9 Series DC motor. It's the same motor that's in the 944. It has a 1,000 amp Soliton 1 motor controller, and it's got 7,900 amp hour lithium iron phosphate cells in series. Gives me an effective range of around 80 miles.
How's that compared to what's in the 944?
It pisses me off. It's a sore subject. So the reality is the current condition of the 944 isn't what I wish it were. It's what the customer spec'd, and more importantly, what he signed for with his checkbook. So he's got 79 cells in his, so he comes out to 252 volts fully charged. I have about half that. And so with electric car, you measure things in kilowatts, not horsepower, because it's a lot easier. Because you got volts and amps. That's a watt. Now you have kilowatts once you breach 1,000, and a kilowatt transfers to a horsepower pretty simply, actually.
746. There you go.
746.
746 watts is a horsepower.
Or a horsepower is 1.3 kilowatts.
Sure.
Yeah, so the kilowatt's stronger. But so that's kind of easy to figure out and guesstimate what your output through your drivetrain is going to be. Whatever your kilowatts input is, that's probably what you're going to get out the back end. because you're still going through the drivetrain. You still have those kinds of losses, and so yeah. I've got at peak right now about 130 kilowatts, and Ray, we have it scaled back so we don't blow up his motor because
if I set it at peak, I've got 170 kilowatts. What I'm actually running is 3/4 of that. Which I don't know off the top of my head what that would be.
That's a Miata, though.
It's too many maths.
That's a that's a Miata, though. Because what would that car have been?
The stock engine would have been 140-ish horsepower.
Well, so friend of the podcast, Josh Fettis, his stock 1.8 dyno at 110 horse to the wheels.
That's what I was saying. It was 110.
It depends on which variant
But
exactly.
I would say 140
condition. Yeah.
and drivetrain loss is probably about right.
Yeah.
So that's a significant improvement, and it's not just the horsepower gain. It's
the torque
the
at
torque curve.
peak, according to the dyno, is around 300 foot-pounds.
Jeez,
Unreal.
that's so much more.
Approximately.
Was that
Excellent.
was that with or without exploding the motor controller?
Okay, that was the 2 runs before the motor controller exploded.
Okay.
what was that at full tilt?
You've had it on
100%?
a
I've had it
dyno?
on a dyno.
That
Yeah.
takes like a special dyno, doesn't it?
No, it's a
No.
stock dyno.
Stock dyno.
Yeah,
it was kind of crude because we didn't have a good way of getting tack into the dyno, and so I was holding it at a fixed RPM, and they were measuring the RPM, and then I mashed the throttle. But no, it was a stock dyno.
Because I've
Got
seen
down.
like videos online of Teslas up on a dyno and then they just like max it out, mess it all up because there's
Well,
Yes.
the Sultan battery did kind of.
Yeah,
tried
so
to get away
an
from
acquaintance
itself.
of ours holds multiple world record for electric drag racing.
okay.
Tell us more.
I need to find that picture that I took. One of the years at EvCon, I got a picture of the 4 Miatas that were there, and what did I add up the torque to be? Somewhere north of 3,000 foot-pounds.
Yeah.
One of them happens to be a Sultan battery, which is John Metrick's car, which holds world records in electric drag racing.
Do you know
So.
rough numbers? I mean, is that like a 9-second car or what are we talking here?
I think it broke into the tens.
On the quarter,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's not slow.
No, it's
No,
not.
it's not slow. It's
No.
not slow by any means.
Because I would imagine that's a bit of a heavy car to get there.
Well, so what
He
makes
uses
it-
different batteries. All right, so here's the thing: is that the motors that we have in our cars are a series wound DC motor, which hasn't really had any significant engineering done to it since the Model T's time frame. Okay, the base design is well over 100 years old.
Well, fun fact for those listening. At the time of the introduction of cars, there were probably as many or more electric cars than there were internal combustion powered cars. And there was, at that time, some debate on which one was going to be the preferred method.
I highly recommend the book Internal Combustion by Edwin Black, I believe. He goes through the whole history of it all back to bicycles. Actually, he goes farther than that. He goes back to deforestation of England and ties that into modern cars.
It's weird. Jay Leno owns like an early 1900s electric car.
So, fun fact, if for anyone that's still listening, one of the first electric cars in the United States was built here in Des Moines.
No kidding.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is it still around?
No, God, no. The guy sold it. It was actually a tech demo for his new fancy batteries. This is turn of the century, last century. Actually, before even. It was like 1890s when he did this. And he wanted to show off his fancy new batteries. And so he contacted a local coach builder to make him a carriage, but then modified it to drop in this electric motor and plug up a whole bunch of his batteries into it and go.
Crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah, Ritual Cafe downtown, right in the middle of the loop. If you go into the Ritual Cafe, they have this garage door, which at first blush you might think that was a renovation. No, that's kind of original. There's actually an elevator just to the side of their spot for the underground electric car storage.
Bizarre.
What?
Yes.
I never would have guessed that.
Yes.
Gosh, that's awesome.
We might have to go check that out.
Yeah, and so the difference between those electric cars and what we built is the batteries.
Right.
Just flat out.
And the control electronics.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit better now. But the main thing is the batteries.
Well, yeah, you have things like microprocessors and stuff like. I mean, it's
Now,
gotta be a lot.
now we
better
don't just have
control.
on and off. We have, analog control and can actually put the power out that we want.
Yeah.
So what's been, when you got into this conversion process, what was the most difficult thing that you had to tackle? Because obviously you're taking a car that was designed to have a gasoline engine in it. And there's certain accessories and things that go along with that in those cars that are meant to be driven off a gasoline engine. So what did you run into when you started tearing these apart that was the most difficult thing that you had to overcome?
Fitting all of the batteries into it. Right now I'm in the process of putting more batteries into the Porsche because I've got a 14 kilowatt hour battery pack, which means nothing to anybody, but it's just over half of a gallon of gasoline worth of energy capacity.
Wow.
And that's a trim 325 pounds
Good Lord.
of just battery.
Huh.
And that's an improvement over lead. About a fourfold improvement over lead.
Oh, I'm sure. Wow. Lead's very, very heavy.
Oh, it's atrocious. Fitting the batteries into the Porsche was actually made a little bit easier when I originally did it because the previous owner didn't want to put as much battery into there. He wasn't ready to chunk out the change to make that happen. Whereas Ray was insane and said, I want a 100-mile range in my conversion. I'm like, all right, well, let's do the math. That's more battery than I have, dude. Okay. I don't know how we're going to fit it in. And so we ended up, the batteries are mainly in the trunk space. So I always try to not encroach on the passenger space. And we were successful in the Miata.
With one exception, I got my helmet after we got the conversion done. I tried to put the helmet in the trunk, and I'm a half an inch off.
So close.
So close,
So
but the
very
trunk lid
close.
doesn't close with the helmet in the trunk.
Yeah.
You should just notch out the bottom of the trunk lid a little bit. There's some.
I've suggested a speed bump.
There's
and
some like reinforcement there. I'm sure if you.
If we got
went
really
at it.
creative,
Yeah.
we could probably
Yeah.
fit it in there. The other option is usually when I've got my helmet with me, I don't have a passenger, and so I can just set it in the passenger seat. But
Well, safety first. You should just wear it.
oh, okay.
There you go.
daily driver. So to answer the question, though, you have a number of accessories normally driven off of the gas engine. You got, just off the top of my head, alternator, air conditioning, power steering. Those are the main ones. Something else that you don't necessarily think of is the vacuum. And we have to account for those for a conversion. So in both of our cars, we've got a Hella vacuum pump that is actually made for the start and stop compliance over in Europe. When the car goes up to a stop and the engine shuts off, you don't want a loss of vacuum because your brake booster runs off of that, other accessories run off of that, and so Hella has actually a couple of small little vacuum pumps that work great. So that's
They're pretty cheap if you scrounge eBay enough.
Yeah, you said you pulled them off of, or yours was originally on like a Tribeca.
Subaru Tribeca is the vehicle that mine came from, or at least that's what the eBay listing said.
Right, but that's an OEM part.
Yeah, it's an OEM part. The part the
up
part
28
is,
or up 32. Those
Up
are two
28
models.
Yeah, up 28 is the much more common one, and if you search eBay enough, you start finding which models it comes off of. You start searching for vacuum pumps for that model, and occasionally you find one for $50. Usually they're 75 to 100 on eBay.
It's still not terrible in the grand scheme of things.
No, that's easy. The more difficult things are power steering and air conditioning. The alternator, okay, so I'll touch the alternator real quick. Both of us have effectively a high-end computer server power supply that's actually a modular thing. It's more easy to see in Ray's car than in mine, but it takes the pack voltage and has several thousand volts of isolation, so it's safe. There's no connection between the chassis of our car and the battery of the traction pack. So it provides that isolation. And mine's tucked away in the trunk, and Ray's is sitting behind his headlights. So there's our alternator. And then
So that drives like radio, headlights, taillights.
The normal 12-volt system. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, window motors.
And I suppose that stuff's not significant draw for you, really, is it? I mean,
You can measure it.
I suppose.
Yeah. When my car is sitting on and idle, I'm pulling 0.3 of an amp out of my pack. So that's 750 watts. Yeah. No, 75 watts. Sorry.
Yes, that sounds like
75 watts.
Yeah.
When my foot is on the brake pedal, it spikes up to 1.1
Yep.
amp because of my freaking tail lights. When the headlights are on, that's another like half an amp. I've been occasionally searching for LED replacements, but there aren't any truly road legal LED replacements that are that much of a power savings. And so it's just annoying.
It's not worth the money.
Yeah, there's not that much power savings, and it's not worth the money.
You're going to get an extra 2-mile range out of it.
Maybe,
over-
yeah.
Who cares?
The only reason I'd be doing it is because it frustrates me.
Yeah, I can
It's like-
understand that.
Yeah. So it's essentially an engine swap, only you don't necessarily have to continually idle the motor, right? That's one of the beauties of it. And so you have two options. Either you can put the similar serpentine or separate belts on pulleys to all these accessories and keep the stock ones, which that was the case with the Porsche originally had. It originally had the air conditioning and power steering on the same belts and everything, just kind of reoriented a bit. The challenge was that the guy that did the original conversion took out the clutch. So it's got a 5-speed manual, but he took out the clutch because you don't have to idle the electric motor.
With dead synchros on third?
Yeah, the original owner decided to chew up all the synchros into third gear. So my second to third is sketchy at best. And the guy also neglected to fix the speedometer and didn't give you a tachometer, and you couldn't hear the engine rev. So you were completely blind trying to just rev match.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, but the good news is you put it in second, you just leave it there until you're on the interstate. First gear is actually pretty useless. Even if I had a clutch, there's no advantage versus just using all the torque in second and just putting it in second and drive.
I'd imagine it's too low of a gearing to be useful. You're just going to light your tires up and brake stuff, I would think.
I don't even get that, honestly. Of course, I got 245. I don't know what the rest of the specs on my tires are, but they're 245s in the rear, so they've got a nice patch.
Yeah, so you got a decent meat back there.
Yeah.
My very first question to Ray when he got here this morning was can you do burnouts with it? So,
Ray has never really tried.
I don't want to because I don't want to
I understand
break
that
things.
entirely. I get it because that's a lot more torque than the original drivetrain was ever built.
So
to
the
withstand,
other
so.
thing to mention is that we were talking about earlier is for launching for autocross. When I autocross in third. I put it in third, and when he says go, I just smash the throttle and go.
And I've ridden in it. It does just that. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, you
Doesn't screw around.
You'd think just hearing that, like, oh, that must be terrible off the line. No, it's every bit as fast and faster than a factory Miata.
But I don't trip the tires at all because there's an article that I was reading comparing 0 to 60 times of various vehicles, and one thing that it also was comparing was 5 to 60 times. And a lot of factory cars, the 5 to 60 time is significantly slower than the 0 to 60 because with your 0 to 60, you rev the engine up, you've got a whole bunch of kinetic energy that you're dumping through the clutch, and you get a much harder launch. I don't do that.
With modern cars now, you have traction control and you can build boost on brake and stuff like
Right.
that. You can't do that from a roll.
Yeah, and so, but when in an electric car, you don't see that advantage. In an electric car, your 5 to 60 time is faster than your 0 to 60 because you weren't building that boost, you weren't building up that kinetic energy. The physics of the 5 to 60 and the 0 to 60 are the same. And so my launches aren't spectacular tire squeals. It just goes. And so doing a burnout would be a challenge because...
Well, you have a clutch still, right?
I do have a clutch. I could rev it up. The problem
You could
with
break things.
The problem with that is it could break things, and it's also it's hard on things because there ends up being slop, and it's it's really hard to judge the amount of kinetic energy and the amount of throttle that I need so that when I drop the clutch that it just continues to go and it doesn't just bounce. Because I have revved it up and let off the clutch and it just bounced in my gearbox from the slop and
gear meshing
and it just wasn't happy. So
Yeah,
I don't do
sounds like
that.
a bad idea all around. So.
Yeah. Well, and so that's the thing is that with electricity, it moves so fast. And so on Ray's motor controller, we've actually programmed into it, because it's really simple, an acceleration ramp. So
Yeah, you kind of like soft launch it.
precisely.
Yep.
And that's very intentional. It's really easy to say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and apply all power immediately.
So on that parameter, it's the amps per second, how quickly your current increases, and the parameter goes from like 50 or 500, which is, I think like 50 to like 250,000. And there's an asterisk in the manual that says setting this above 2,000 is asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Like, because people use this motor controller for drag racing, and when you're drag racing, you're asking for trouble.
I think I'd still want it to kind of ramp out a little bit.
So I've got mine set to 1,000. So it takes me a full second to go from no power to full throttle. Which may be a bit less aggressive than I could. I may be able to make it more aggressive.
Like I said, that car still accelerates as fast or faster than a stock Miata, despite the fact that you're in third gear.
Oh, yeah.
And I really don't see why you'd push it on a car that could very easily break things if you started pushing it. There's no reason to break things.
Well, the Miata's not a muscle car.
Right.
It's never been a muscle. When you see someone try to muscle out a Miata, it just seems kind of weird. And they always have to change out the rear end and typically the transmission when you start putting that kind of power into it.
Had you had the 1.6 car, I guarantee you would not be on the factory rear end, because you would have blown it to smithereens.
Yeah, I would have destroyed the diff.
Yeah, immediately.
Yeah, that is one advantage that I came from an SE.
Did you know that getting into it?
Kinda. I knew when I was buying it what it meant that it was an SE. I didn't necessarily. I knew that I didn't want to have a 1.6. I knew I wanted to start with a 1.8 donor. Beyond that, no. The Kraft did offer me $300 and a transmission to swap to a 5-speed. He would have given me a transmission and $300 cash for the 6-speed transmission.
I don't think the 5-speed transmission is not really a weak point necessarily. I mean, your gearing may be more.
According to the internets, the 6-speed can handle a little bit more power than the 5-speed, but that may just be all hearsay, because there are so many fewer 6-speeds around. And people doing stupid things with Miatas more commonly are doing stupid things with the 5-speed, and so they're just more common to break. So I don't know. Again, the 5-speed isn't a bad transmission. It holds up.
Like I said, I've seen people blow up 700 foot-pound of torque rated T56s with, 300 horsepower LT1s. So
Yeah, it
it's
just
all about
depends on how you drive it.
It's all about the dumb shit you can do with it,
Right.
and it seems like the cheaper they get, the dumber the shit that people do to them.
8,000 RPM clutch drops, gonna break something. Don't care what it is.
Right.
There's just so much energy involved in that action that.
Right. Well, and that's the thing that gets kind of weird is if we go back to the electric motor and just dumping all that energy so fast, it can deliver that power so fast. You don't have to. So you look at your power band from your dyno pole, and you get that peak power in a gas engine at a couple thousand RPM minimum. Whereas, especially torque.
Yeah, so on my dyno chart, it was a textbook dyno chart for a series DC motor. I had all of my torque constant from zero, or from when we started, which was, I guess, like 1,000 RPM.
You do a rolling start.
Did a rolling start. Right. So from 1,000 RPM out to 3,500, I believe. That's when it started rolling off because of back EMF. Therefore, my power was linearly increasing from 1,000 RPM out to 3,500 RPM, and then started rolling off, also fairly linearly. So I did have a peak in my power, and it was very predictable. But my torque was flat until I hit the knee. But that was at the full 1,000 amps. I'm pretty sure if I were to graph that again at the 750 limit, I would have had full torque all the way until 4,000, which is where I usually shift. So
I didn't realize that was that low of a rev range.
Yeah, the Series DC motors, the spec sheet says 5,500 RPM is your red line. They dyno test or they spin test them in the factory up to 8,000 RPM, but you don't want to put power through it at that. It'll spin at that and it won't shrapnel from spinning, but power you want to stop at 5,500. On my car, I've got the rev limit set at 4,500, and I usually shift about 4,000 because the manufacturer says your continuous RPM should be between 35 and 4,000.
Yeah.
Crazy. I would have expected them to be, much higher.
Well,
ranges
so
than that. But I suppose it's a lot of.
It depends on the motor.
It depends on the
mass,
motor.
isn't it?
This is a Series DC, and so there are actually brushes that are spinning on a commutator. And as your motor spins, your brush is going from positive to negative to make it spin.
So if you ever picked up your corded drill or even a cordless drill, you look into the vent,
pull the
you can
trigger,
see all
you
those
let off,
sparks.
and it sparks. Yeah,
It's literally the same motor design that's in a corded hand drill that is in these cars.
So do they make brushless version? Because I know
Yes.
my new DeWalt pack at work that I just got a month ago is
Right.
brushless.
Yeah.
the Tesla is running a brushless motor.
It's actually an induction AC on that.
Yeah, there are options that we could have gone brushless, and those will rev up to 10,000
That was
RPM.
really pushing you for that twin
Way
motor.
more expensive, I'm sure.
Not way more.
Not
Really?
Way more.
It was, I think, $3,000 more.
There's
That's
some
way more to me.
It's all relative.
It's
So,
relative.
so
That's a lot of money.
the other question that hasn't been asked is how much does the conversion cost?
Yeah, I think we might have been avoiding that question a little bit. If you want to answer it, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Because race car. No,
Well, yeah, my shirt has a Miata on it that says "because race car." I've got all told right around 25,000 in the whole thing. That's including the purchase of the car, and everything as it sits is about 25,000.
Yeah, so kind of take a step back. So on your Miata, you have for your transmission, everything back, like drive shaft, everything is stock.
Yeah. Okay. So the drivetrain. I explained this earlier when we weren't recording, but
Right.
the drivetrain, the electric motor has a standard face. It's called a B face. There's a company out of Florida that was making adapter plates that meshed that B face to a Miata transmission bell housing and flywheel bolt pattern. So on the flywheel, it's not a stock flywheel. It's an aftermarket with an aftermarket clutch, but it is a Miata flywheel and clutch. And then from that point back, the bell housing, the transmission, the diff are all stock.
Okay, so then you would need like an adapter plate as well, or like engine mounts.
We had to make
a
a custom
made a yoke
engine.
for it, and then it bolts into the subframe with some GM super generic alternator mounts.
No, transmission mounts.
Transmission mounts, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
We tried to go off the shelf for that.
Yeah, the actual mounts into the frame are rubber bushing mounts from a GM transmission. The yoke that holds the motor in place is a custom welded steel.
Then did you guys have to do a lot of custom fab, or is there a lot of the stuff you can actually purchase and then make work?
So there are, especially with the Miata, there's a couple of kits you can get.
Okay.
Don't.
Fair enough.
You guys
Go see you.
Yeah. Well, no, not even that. It's a matter of your intent and the quality you put into it. There's one kit that I saw years ago. I looked at it, and last I looked, they hadn't changed it. And they designed it all around lead batteries. So half of what was there was useless anyway. But there's, like I said, I'm an engineer from birth. And so I just intuit a lot of things that other people completely overlook.
Okay.
And that's what I see in those kits is they try to be really simple. They're like, oh, we're going to make it into a Lego kit for you. Yeah, not quite. That said, one of my dreams is to do a proper kit. Also, let's spin that back around. One of the fallacies of electric cars and conversions, here in Iowa, I've only done 2 legitimate cars, okay, Ray's and mine. because there's no market. I've gone to a variety of ecologically minded conventions, et cetera. I'm like, all right, these are the people that are going to care about electric cars, right? The problem is they don't have money. And that's been the case with these electric conversions is everyone thinks, oh, it's a cheap thing. So they cheap out left and right and just suffer every step of the way.
I think that your conversions are just like race car parts. You have a triangle with 3 sides, and
Yep.
one of those is cheap, reliable, and fast.
Yep.
You get to pick 2.
Yep.
You don't get all 3.
No,
Nope.
you don't. And so, yeah, the Porsche, similar componentry, but the main difference is the battery pack. It's about $140 a cell.
Well, my pack was half of my cost.
Yeah. And so that's the primary way you can reduce the cost, but you take a direct hit on performance and range.
Yeah, that's not where I'd be wanting to cut it. I mean,
Well, to be fair, we only run 3/4 of the voltage to Ray's car. Well, theoretically, maybe ish. 750%.
The motor, according to the manufacturer data sheet, the max motor voltage is 170 volts. And so we respect that. There's a setting for that in the motor controller. So I told it to respect that. It doesn't always respect that.
No, bad things happen when it doesn't.
Bad
though.
things happen when it
But
doesn't.
it does it on a dyno and makes it really cool.
Yeah.
Sparks fly out from underneath the car. It's awesome.
that's not what I want.
Yeah,
No,
and then it
it's
doesn't
bad.
run again.
Yeah, and then you just suddenly lose power, and you're like,
Yeah. But yeah, so you really have to weigh it out, and I've found that there's no one in Iowa that is a tree hugger that has the money and the interest enough to actually do this. Because if you just want an electric car, you can pick up a used Leaf for $10,000.
Go buy a
Right.
used Leaf because nobody is certain about Leafs, and so used ones are like 10,000. Like a three-year-old car that is in some ways a premium car is only 10,000.
Yeah, so a conversion really is more like a race car where you build it up the way that you want it.
So let's pretend for a moment that I've jumped into this and I've built my car.
Right.
Now it's running and driving. What's it take to maintain it? Is there a lot of maintenance? Is there a lot of money? What will the batteries? How long will the batteries last? That sort of stuff.
Right. So that's the big one that everyone's curious about and worried about is the batteries lasting, because that's why all of our iPhones only have a shelf life of 2 years. That's why every electronic device goes crapping out, because the battery dies. These batteries are spec'd for 3,000 to 5,000 charge cycles.
Are they data center batteries essentially?
No, these were actually developed, co-funded by the Chinese government for military use.
Awesome.
Military
Even
batteries.
better. Mil spec.
The company, the brand name of the batteries is CALB, China Aviation Lithium Battery. I don't believe the aviation part of that. My thought, well, this is all speculation, but my speculation is that these batteries were funded by the Chinese government to build diesel submarines. Because if you look at what this battery does well, it stores charge. It is very efficient at input and output of charge. It's not the most weight efficient of the chemistries, but it is very stable. What does the Chinese military need, and what are they building? Diesel submarines for coastal defense. Because a diesel submarine is cheaper and quieter than a nuclear submarine, but does not have the range. So that's really where I think
you don't build a heavy battery to put in an airplane. So
No.
No.
yeah,
really.
I see where you're getting.
So
Yeah, so these cells are 3.2 volts resting or nominal voltage, whereas most lithium batteries are 3.7 volts. And so that's why no one making electric cars commercially are using these particular batteries, this chemistry, I should say. The difference, though, is that they're not getting 3,000 to 5,000 charge cycles. And I always blow people's minds when I say, okay, so let's say that we build you a 100-mile range car. 3,000 to 5,000 charge cycles means that one battery pack should last you about 500,000 miles. And that's
Okay.
to 80% depth, 80% of original capacity.
How long does the motor last? Because I know, like with my drill, because this is basically the only brushed motor thing I have experience with. I have had to rebuild that motor on it twice.
Right.
but I mean, I'm pretty mean to it. But
Yeah.
I mean, can you rebuild those motors? Do they
Yeah.
need it? Is it a semi-regular thing?
So that's actually, I'll give you the ugly answer to that.
I know
half
the
reason-
Bradley's shot the motor and it is no longer.
Yeah,
with
because
us.
of weather. Because of Iowa winters. Yes, seriously. That's the reason I have an S10 now. Because the Bradley was my daily driver. That was my full-on intent. This kit car with gold wing doors. That literally someone took a picture of me.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I go to this Radio Shack to pick up I don't know what, because they don't sell anything anymore. But I get out of the car and I see some guy walk up to it and take a picture of it. Months later, I am at a local car rally, and someone says, "Oh yeah, I saw that car on the internet." I'm like, "Not this one." He goes, "Oh yeah," and he pulls it up, and it's on bangshift.com. I'm like, I don't remember anyone.
That car's been on Bang Shift?
It's on Bangshift.
Oh my god, it's like my favorite webpage on the planet.
Yeah. The funny thing is, the guy never walked up to me. He watched me get out of the car, but didn't have the balls to ask me anything. So Bangshift guys made up a story about this car, which isn't entirely true, but gave me a lot more history about my own car. Apparently, they did actually make some electric versions of that. Mine was not.
So they assumed that was an original electric build?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's an aside. So Iowa winter, it was a particularly warm day, and then the following day was particularly cold. And so I had frost on the brush housing of the motor when I started going in the morning. It froze the brushes in the holder. And so the brush is literally being pressed into the commutator bars with a spring. And if you want your brushes to last longer, use stiffer springs. Because the primary wear is electrical, not mechanical. And so
Interesting.
Yeah, so if there's a spark gap, there's a spark. If there's a spark, you're destroying comm bars and brushes. And so
I've literally had things flying out of the back of my drill and hitting me.
yeah,
That's
not
probably
good.
what you're getting at.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I still need to get around to actually pulling that motor apart and actually cleaning it up. But
So then what would it cost to rebuild it if you did that?
that is probably going to be
It
north
depends
of,
on if you get to that stage where you've truly broken it.
Yeah.
Because there's two different questions. There's if under normal wear and tear, what would it cost? And under you broke it, what does
Okay,
it
so
cost?
Well, either
let's-
way,
let's go with
if you gotta
normal wear and tear.
Normal wear and tear, you should annually inspect the brushes because these brushes are spec'd off of stationary use and industrial application, and so they spec them to like 50,000 hours or something like that. Just check them every year. Just look at them and see that there's mass there and that it's a clean, smooth surface finish on it. But they should last years, and they're $250 a set.
How many are in a motor?
8 total.
Okay, that's not
But-
terrible.
but,
I mean,
But that's $250 for the full set of
Yeah,
eight.
$250 a set.
you're swinging me around here. These are all good things.
Oil changes. I haven't looked at my transmission oil lately.
So,
Yeah. So the
is
only
there-
oil that I've got is transmission and diff.
well, you're
And
gonna have
those
that with
are-
a normal car, so
Yeah,
I'm not
and
gonna
those
worry
are
about that.
absurd high mileage.
Brakes. So the
That
Series
stuff
DC
isn't
motor
gonna
does not
change
have
anyway.
regen braking. So our electric cars, what the advantage of the Series DC is it's tons of torque. The disadvantage is you don't get regen braking. Regen braking is more for feel than anything really productive because it only really does something for you when you're slowing down. And so people think, oh, I can get all kinds of range out of the regen. Well, think about it. How long are you ever on your brake pedal? That's the total amount of distance you could possibly, theoretically, maybe with pixie dust, recover.
Be good in a race car.
It would be fantastic in a race car.
Yeah, it's very useful in a race car. You look at what Formula... Well, actually, maybe it's good in a race car because you look at what Formula One's really doing. They're doing regen into a flywheel and doing that purely mechanically and avoiding conversion loss.
Do you guys follow Formula E at all?
Not much.
Not much.
No.
They do have regen. It is configurable.
You can hear that.
Yeah.
But in terms of a pure... It depends. If you've got an electric car already, doing regen into your battery pack's the easiest thing. If you don't have an electric car and you look at what Formula One has been doing, they've been doing mechanical regen.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And so anyway, back to the question. The brush motors, tons of torque, no regen, also brushes, which aren't that big of an issue. But all the production cars are AC or brushless DC, which is basically an AC with a permanent magnet inside of it. And those don't have brushes. So then you just have a bearing on each end of the motor shaft, and that's it. And it's a sealed bearing. You never have to mess with it.
they are running coolant on them, and so you need to
you have
check.
12 coolant
Notice that
loops.
you still have radiators and they're plumbed in.
Yeah.
So the motor controller uses the same technology in essence as what your computer processor does. Your computer processor doesn't like getting hot. Either do these motor controllers. And we're dumping kilowatts of energy. So hundreds of horsepower through silicon. It doesn't want to get hot. So you still dump tons of coolant through it to keep it happy.
So is that an electrically driven pump then?
Yeah.
Or is that run off?
Ironically, it's actually a computer water pump.
Yep.
Oh,
From
really?
a water coolant system.
That has enough CFM to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Interesting.
Yeah, you just need constant flow. You just don't want to heat soak it. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
There's a giant heat sink in there to do the immediate thing, but you just don't want to heat soak it. The motors are self-cooled. They got fan blades in them, just like your drill motor. Exactly the same.
Yeah, it's just a scaled up version.
Exactly. I mean, so that's the interesting thing is cruising down the highway, especially in a gas car, you want to be low RPM relatively. Well, with an electric, you don't want that because that means you're dumping lots of current and you're not spinning that fan. You're actually better off idling at $4,000.
Yeah, when I'm on the highway, I'm in fifth gear between 3,000 and 4,000 RPM.
At like 65, 70 miles an hour?
Yeah. I cruise at a constant power, and I let my speed be what it is. I may annoy people around me, but I'm approximately highway speed. If I really need to accelerate, I can, but I'm close enough with traffic.
It's time.
It's time.
Yeah, I think
Let's
Go
check this
see
out.
some cars.
So we'll take a little. There'll be kind of an edit gap here, and then we'll come back and we will give our verdict. All right, we are back. Robbie and I actually drove the cars.
I did. I got to drive.
I drove the 944, and Robbie
I drove the Miata, which is the faster vehicle.
So let's start with Adam because Adam didn't drive.
No, I didn't get a chance to
But
drive.
Adam
I
was
have
on
ridden-
an autocross course.
I've ridden in
the
an
Miata.
autocross, and we actually talked about it a smidge in the episode where I talked about driving Chaz's Miata, because that was the same autocross that I drove Ray's Miata, or I rode in Ray's Miata, and it's from the passenger seat. I think it's a much better car in that scenario.
The car is better than the
Than
gas-powered
than a gas-powered
equivalent.
equivalent. Yes. So I know Chaz has much nicer suspension, much more expensive. Let's go with that. More expensive.
What does he have?
He has Zetas. They're like $2,000
okay.
setups. I mean,
I've got the Flying Miata VMAX.
yeah. So you're not running stock, and they're definitely not bad. But I think his are. We'll go with more expensive at least. I don't know that they're better, worse, the same.
He may
whatever,
have tuned his in better, because I just kind of went with the recommendations that Flying Miata had printed on the instructions for amount of rebound clicks, and that's it.
Well, so that was literally the first time that car had been on course with that suspension.
Oh, okay.
And that was actually why I was driving it, was to try and help him dial it in a little bit, because I'm an expert.
You're the resident suspension expert.
Sure, we're going to go with that. I'm not, but that's not my problem.
So what was your? You say it's better, but let's be more specific.
So,
than better.
Corner exit was the big problem with Chaz's Miata. When
Okay.
you push the long skinny pedal, nothing happened. And Ray's Miata obviously doesn't have that issue to the extent that Chaz's did, because he has torque now, and that was the biggest thing that the BP lacks. The BP is the factory motor, is that it makes no torque whatsoever. It's a very lackluster engine. The Miata in general has always kind of lacked that little bit of spunk.
Right.
And so, not that they're not great cars, even in factory form, they're a lot of fun to drive. But that I believe that the electric version of it is better in that scenario for sure. So, but I mean, yeah, I think it's great.
It's hard to tell not driving, but did you notice any weight difference? Did you notice any push, anything like that?
I don't know, not really.
I definitely noticed that I hit a patch of gravel and understeered really badly.
Yeah, well, but that would happen no matter the situation. That's not the car's fault.
I didn't set up the corner right, and I got a little wide and hit some gravel.
That's not necessarily the electric conversion's fault.
No.
So that would have happened to gas or electric. So
I think to some extent it's a glowing recommendation in itself to say that it's a Miata, but it's better and it has more power.
yes,
Top of the list of things that people complain about in the Miata.
I will say that
It's at
I'm
the
still
top.
not 100%
Okay.
dedicated to it. There are a few things that I personally would have to change in the way I do things to justify owning one, and they're things that I can't quite do at this stage in my life.
Okay.
That being that if I had one, I don't think I'd want it as a race car unless I can somehow, and maybe you guys know a way of doing this, but I would want it to be more of a hybrid version, more of these, big three hypercars where it is an electrically driven car that is supplemented with an internal combustion engine, because I'd still want to be able to do track days, and I'd still want to be able to go out and drive the car farther away than their range will allow them to do. And so that's still a problem for me. And I don't know that I can justify it as a daily driver for the same range reasons, because I can't quite justify having a daily and then a long hauler, which I need quite regularly, and a race car. That's too many things for me where I sit today.
So that's an interesting question. Have you guys looked at all at a generator?
Yeah. So I've got a harebrained idea, and I had another harebrained
For
idea.
the best ideas always start that way.
Right.
Love it.
So, right off the bat, the electric motor is tied right to the transmission, right? Mm-hmm. And we have an
That's the
auxiliary
big problem.
Right. So we got this auxiliary shaft on the front of the motor, and I thought to myself, what if instead of deriving power off of that, I don't apply electric power to the motor, just use it as a connection and apply power to it through that. So what if I took a small gas engine on the accessory pulley and just would pop start that sucker when I get on the highway? I call it the puddle jumper. And so in town, I would just have this little gas engine that would just be inert, sitting there with a clutch just freewheeling. And then I get on the interstate, kicks on, and then the electric system thinks I'm coasting downhill for the next hour.
Okay.
That's fair.
The other option, which I haven't done personally.
But we have seen done.
Oh, and I've tested it out, and it works, but it's absolutely a nightmare.
And it made it around an autocross track.
It did, actually. So one of the cars that people don't know that Tesla worked on was the Toyota RAV4.
Oh my gosh, Robbie.
It's a great vehicle.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, Toyota contacted Tesla. It's like, hey, look, we need to make these compliance cars. We did these RAV4s back in the day. Can you just do something? And so they did. And again, from that electric vehicle conversion convention I went to, there's a gentleman from Utah that has an electric RAV4 that he put on a tow hitch and then scrapped out a VW Bug.
Oh, God.
I think I know where this is going.
and tied it to the brake lights. So when he hits the brakes, it cuts the ignition for the gas engine. He leaves it in neutral, towing it, but then when he wants to actually get pushed by the trailer, he pops it into third, and then as you accelerate, you feel the compression of the engine lagging against you because he's not clutching it. He's just letting it be, and pop starts it, and then it starts pushing you.
Oh my gosh.
He has driven cross country with at least 3 of these trailers because it's a VW and it dies.
With gas cans just kind of strapped onto it.
Bungee cords.
So this is a little, about 2 years ago, I looked at a Formula 500 that would have been an extreme project car. Those are a very small Formula car. They're driven by that one particularly was actually a Formula 440, but it has a snowmobile engine on it, and they are solid rear axle. Okay. And so had I have actually bought that car, I probably would have gotten in contact with you guys because I had this crazy idea. Could you drive the solid rear axle using an electric motor and an internal combustion motor simultaneously?
Yeah. Totally.
And make a quote unquote hybrid car.
Absolutely.
Sure.
That would, because the snowmobile motors, if you let them drop out of their rev range, they're useless until you get them built back up again. So if you take a tight autocross corner, that's a bad day. but the electric motor would help me overcome that.
Right.
Is that something that could work? I
Yeah.
know that's
McLaren
not,
calls it
that's
torque
not,
fill.
I know that's not a streetcar solution per se.
So the
Not
whole thing
simply,
comes down
anyway.
to tuning it to actually work the way you want it to, and marrying the basically the horsepower and torque curves to where they actually cut in at the right times and cut out at the right times, and they wouldn't really fight each other per se, but it could work.
God, maybe I should have bought it.
I've got a more ridiculous idea than that.
I know
If you're
where
talking
it's
a
at.
little
It's
Formula
still
car.
sitting in a garage, and it still could be mine. But him and I are literally at half. I'm at half what he thinks it's worth, and I'm being generous.
Everybody thinks that
Right.
Formula 440 cars are worth way more than they're actually worth.
because
Right.
Formula 440 is a dead racing thing.
Like
That
2
class
series ago.
does not exist anymore.
Because now it's Formula 600, and for a while it was Formula 500.
Which means
So
that
it's super dead.
and it's a chassis that's literally older than I am. So the chassis is no longer competitive. The motor that's on it is no longer competitive. The only reason that I would purchase that car is to just build some stupid hybrid arrowed out autocross machine that
He wants
would
to
not
build
be
it.
legal in any
So
class.
mule?
but
Well, yeah.
whatever I want.
So Mule.
Yeah.
We mentioned John Metrick earlier with the Sultan battery, drag racing Miata, electric drivetrain, blah, blah. We made a really horrible Power Wheels race car a couple years ago. We won't go there right now, but he was impressed by it. We'll just put it that way. And so it got us thinking, what if we actually push this to the extreme? So we've drawn it out, and back of the napkin math, it almost works out.
The other justification is the Lindy forklift go-kart.
Yeah, the best animation for programming a device ever. So Linde is a forklift manufacturer over in Germany. And for whatever reason, their PR guys decided to make an electric go-kart with current tech. That
We're
they have.
talking about a forklift company right now, so it worked to some extent. So kudos to their PR
Yeah,
guys.
they work. Their PR team,
Right,
knew what they
exactly.
were
No,
doing.
the best thing about the whole video, though, was that when they were programming it, they had a stream of ones and zeros flying out of the forklift and into the go-kart.
So the
Best
purpose
Sounds
of
terribly cheesy.
the
Oh, it
purpose
was
of the
awesome.
go-kart was to break the world record 0 to 60 acceleration.
Oh,
of
I think I
electric
remember
go-karts.
seeing that.
They set it at just north of 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I want to say like 3.1, 3.2. There is a university in Germany that broke it again just under 3 seconds.
That's kind of like that one was like a Formula SAE car
Right.
with an electric drive.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that video.
And so Mule is our horrible idea to replicate that amount of speed, but on a significantly reduced budget.
This can never end poorly.
Well, so our alternator driven mini bike was the prototype for can we actually get stupid amounts of power out of alternators. And so Mule's horrible plan is we strap a bunch of alternators onto a go-kart chassis and say go.
The best part about
Yes.
it is we have full torque vectoring control, and so we can corner like none other, in theory.
God, Michael's over here looking at me like, so when are you going to buy this?
So
thing
many
again?
bad ideas.
Oh, it is.
It's horrible.
It's horrible.
We may be able to convince John Metrick to, give us a discount on some batteries because
I feel like there's probably an SCCA loophole class that we
For
could,
this?
for like
yeah.
a mod or something like that. We could just really ruin some people's days.
Yeah, we already talked.
totally.
Yeah, we talked to some of the guys at SCCA, DMVR, and they were on board with us doing something.
Interesting.
Damn it.
The
Okay.
worst part about it with SCCA is you have to actually have a seatbelt. I'm not sure I really want to be strapped into this thing.
No, I'm just stupid enough. It's whatever.
Yeah.
Just have lots of people with fire extinguishers and
I'm not worried about fire.
No, not fire.
Flipping over. is
I'm
the
worried about
issue.
rollover
Yeah.
and
well, you could build
Yeah,
a cage.
you're
Yeah.
low and you're wide. You got a cage. You're fine.
Yeah.
That's why you start with a formula car that's already got this issue sorted out and go from there.
Yeah, maybe.
maybe.
So anyway,
Yeah.
driving
Robbie.
impressions from
Robbie.
you guys.
My impression was that it was just like the MB2 Raceway go-karts because that's exactly how it felt when I put my foot to the floor. Like you just quietly go, but you're going.
So MB2, for those of you who are not local, is local to Des Moines. For us,
It's not local. It's national.
well, yeah, they have one in California as well, but it's an indoor go-kart track that we go to semi-regularly, but they have electric-powered carts instead of gas-powered carts. And I've driven both, and I've heard some people say, oh, I don't like the electric ones. I like them better.
Much better.
Because I think that they're more realistic to my car, because although the torque is obviously sooner than mine, it's more in line with what my car will do than those little two-stroke.
Yeah, it's not like the gas ones which just die. If they get out of the torque band, they just stop.
Yeah.
It's
so I like them
unbelievable.
better.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, so I'm in the exact same boat as you are with besides an autocross setting, like a tight course, I don't see an application that I'd ever use it. So I would use it. I would think I would like to do some sort of goofy hybrid like what the hypercars are doing, and then do like what you were thinking. Or if you do a full electric autocross only car, where like on a tight course, you need that torque right away. And that's the only time I really would ever use it.
You don't have to worry about shifting.
What class do you run in, Ray? Are you guys an X prepared? Is that where they put you?
They put us in XP.
Because I wonder if you really broke down that rule book, if that is a class legal car.
Somewhere.
If you went to nationals, could I take that Miata? Because
does Mitsubishi make an electric motor?
Probably.
Yes.
There it is.
Well, no. Mitsubishi.
There is an
purple
electric Mitsubishi I
car
saw
that-
yesterday. Yeah.
I don't think it necessarily has to be, because X Prepared's class rules is just that any motor swap that's not OEM.
Right.
So
You're saying,
what I'm saying is an electric motor
yeah.
is by definition still a motor. It
Yep.
still propels the car in a forward motion, and it's not made by the OEM. But I wonder if you could break street mod in a Mitsubishi.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's what you're going with?
Yeah,
That
but-
would be really fun.
So there's a little gray area in there because the company that makes the electric motors is not the company that makes the cars, which is weird. But I don't know if anybody would actually.
Well, hold on a second. Project Cloverleaf.
Project Cloverleaf. So we already mentioned that you can pick up a used Leaf for half the price of doing a conversion. Oh, it's a front-wheel drive
Robbie,
car.
You have a Nissan.
You do a Nissan. do it instead of an SR20. Go.
But wait,
Leaf.
it gets better.
It's a front-wheel drive car. You rip out its rear axle, drop in the front end of another one into the back, and
spin
have
it around.
four-wheel
Make
drive.
an all-wheel drive car?
Yes.
Now, see, I think that SCCA did have the forethought to say you can't change the drivetrain configuration, because what it would end up happening if you could is there'd be a bunch of people with early Volkswagen Golfs with all-wheel drive systems swapped into them, just destroying everybody. So that rule does exist. But you could take, say, a Nissan Sentra, which is front-wheel drive, and put the Nissan Leaf drivetrain in it and beef up the battery setup and maybe make something work. Potentially.
Could
Yeah.
you? Could you take the Leaf motor out and then adapt it to the whatever transmission that Robbie has
No.
on his SR20? That won't work.
No, not really. The way that they designed this whole thing is just this stack.
It's just
it's
one
like
unit.
Lego blocks stacked on each other, and
Oh,
there's not. You don't have an output shaft going anywhere useful that you could. No, it's all married into one solid block.
we'll crack this, but I think once we crack it, we won't tell people.
This has got to be my favorite conversation we've had so far. They're straight here. This is awesome. I love it.
So my impressions of the 944. I've never driven. So I have this thing. I've loved 944 since I was a kid, and I've never driven one. So that's the first 944 that I've ever driven. Everybody talks about how it's got the best handling in the entire world, or at least up until recently. It handles amazingly, and the interesting thing about that is you said all of the components of the steering are all what would have been in a normal turbo 944.
Yeah, it's the original rack. I pulled it out and had to put it back together because
You have the competition pack, right?
the club pack
Or club,
yeah.
whatever they call it.
Yeah.
So it's got better suspension.
Yeah, it does have an upgraded suspension. It's got stiffer roll bar. It's got I think it's Coney shocks originally.
The brakes are not small. It's got
No.
pretty good sized
It's
brakes
got-
on
it's-
it.
Yeah.
it's got big brakes. The brakes are the same diameter front and back. They're not interchangeable because it's got separate parking drum brakes embedded into the rotor and all that
Oh
jazz.
yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, it's pretty
that's
slick.
the way a lot of them do it.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, like I said, I personally haven't ridden in. Well, no, I did. Actually, I rode shotgun the last Autocross at Adventureland. There was a 944 naturally aspirated, and he had narrower tires and taller sidewalls than what I have. And I'm sure that I'd been able. My 944 outperformed his from the passenger seat perspective. I'm not biased whatsoever.
Everybody knows my favorite thing to do is beat on other people's cars. Because I beat the shit out of my cars until they break, and then I just beat on other people's cars periodically.
Don can attest to that.
There was
Now you will never ride in the Miata.
Yeah. Well, it's partially why I didn't.
We probably
ride
did
in
it
the
right
Miata.
by having me ride with you. So I'm scared of other people's cars.
So, but when I got in it though, it was interesting, and it's on the video if we ever get this out. It's just enough different when you get in it because there's no noise, right? Ignition's on, you're enabled, you can go. Nothing's happening, and it's just enough weird that it screws up your senses. Because you get in a car normally, I don't care if it's a rental car, if it's your car, it's somebody else's car. You start it, engine's running, we put it in gear, all right, we're good to go. But it's just enough different that it just screws up all of that muscle memory and all of that kind of ingrained memory of driving normal cars that you just question everything that you do. I started to get comfortable with it once we kind of got it back to where we do the recording. I was starting to get more and more and more comfortable with it, and the car does handle amazingly, and you don't notice anything different about the brakes, even though they're running off that booster. It's just, it handles really well. It was really interesting. It's kind of like the R32, the GTR that Lucas has. It's extremely mechanical, especially because you've got obviously you're working on putting more batteries in it, so you've got the sound deadening out. You said the gas tank's out of it.
Right.
I noticed the floor is literally gone in the back.
Yeah, but the carpet that I have in there is original, and so originally it was just flat right across the bottom. So that's no different. I just lost the spare tire.
Is that where the gas tank was?
The gas tank was straddling across the transaxle, and so you'd have a little bit of sound deadening there. And this morning when I got those extra battery boxes in there that I haven't filled yet, I pulled out of the driveway and it was just louder than I'll get at. I couldn't believe it. And so then I threw in the floor mats because if I would have taken those out, you'd have been deafened with all the mechanical noises that this thing produces.
Do you remember that being in the GTR, right? It just there's mechanical things happening.
You can hear and feel things happening.
That's what it's like
great
in the 944 is that you feel very kind of connected, because the handling's great, but you're hearing so many things that aren't what would be the engine.
I guarantee you that even if, say, Tesla builds a performance-minded electric car, it won't have that feel still. It will still be quiet and numb and not...
And none of you guys have been in the Miata with the top up. It is freaking loud. We made some mistakes in where we cut, and there are certain spots where you can look down and you can see ground through the trunk. And so you get just all kinds of road noise from the back side of it. But it is a weird kind of loud because it's not engine loud. It's just like, oh, I hear my diff.
Yeah. Yeah, Adam, I fear you are absolutely on point with any of the production performance-oriented electric cars. I think they're going to numb them up too much and then try to stuff engine sounds. And like, my opinion is just get rid of the sound deadening because it's not that noisy. I mean, you hear a lot of sound, but it's not loud. And if you really like that sense of being connected and hearing everything, you can't beat this, in my opinion.
I saw something. So Saleen has their own version, their own like model of the Tesla.
They got a Model S.
Modded.
I haven't dug
Saleen.
into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so you can buy a Model S and then you can drop it off at Saleen and they'll modify it.
Right.
And 95% of what they do is just aesthetics. You know, they have
Right.
like a lit kit for it and stuff like that.
Right.
But then apparently they take some of the sound deadening that is around the motor in the Model S out so that it's louder and you can actually hear things happening in that car.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what I'd end up doing
Yeah.
if I owned one for sure.
I definitely would. The other thing that I would do with a Model S is throw a larger radiator into it because that's everything I've heard is taking on track. The first lap is awesome, and then everything heat soaks because it's been designed for road use.
Apparently someone's building one of those for Pikes Peak.
Yeah, I did see that.
Another acquaintance of ours, well, mine at least, guys out at EV West, they did an E30, I think, BMW. They did actually take an M3 and gutted the whole thing and used the big brother to the motors we have and the big brother to the motor controllers we have, and that thing is absolutely nuts.
For Pikes Peak, or
yeah, they built it for Pikes Peak,
because that's kind of become the thing now at Pikes Peak is fully electric cars. Reese Millen's doing it. Monster Tajima's been doing it for a while now. Because you don't lose power, as they say that from the bottom, from the start line at the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain, the average car, even with turbocharging, loses 40% of the power it makes over the course of the race. And you don't have that problem with the electric engine because it doesn't care what density the air is or how much of it there is.
The radiator does.
Well, yeah, but the motor itself does not care. It makes the same amount of power regardless of the situation. It could be in space and it would not change anything.
Yeah, I want to say that his first year, I think he only went out there 1 year actually. I want to say his run, and he does have racing experience, but they had hired a professional driver to take their car up on this track, and weather happened at some other event, delayed it. He had to do that event, not theirs. And so the owner of the company ended up having to drive it. And he came in faster than all of the classic cars, supercharged, whatever. I mean, you name it, Cobras. He beat them all by the clock, not by class, because they get all kinds of stuff, but actually just straight up time. Aced them.
I'd be willing to put money on the fact that when Sebastian Loeb's Peugeot record is broken, it will be done with a 100% EV car. Guarantee it.
Yeah.
So real quick, before you guys leave, can we talk about the 515 makerspace?
Yeah.
Because you guys are involved with that at some level, but I don't know what. So we'd like to talk more about that.
Well, my involvement, I am one of the founding board members. I've actually been on the board every year that we've had a board, which I'm trying to get off of now. But
I know how those things go.
Yeah, I suspect the SCCA group has a similar amount of.
There's a reason we're not on it yet. It's because when I want to get back off again, I'm not sure I'll be able to.
Yeah. But the makerspace is keywords to Google are either makerspace or hackerspace. They're places for people to go and hang out and make things and try and tinker and be around like-minded people. It's all self-driven. It's all what you want to get out of it, and it's experimentation. Just 'cause.
Yeah, kind of imagine the 24-hour gyms, because members get full access. You have to get trained on certain tools, but you work on your own projects, come in whenever you want, and like Ray said, collaborate with other idiots that want to expertly execute horrible ideas.
With all our spare time that we don't have, we should maybe look into it. It sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah, I'd like to go over there and just poke around.
So we're wanting to get a new location. Where we currently are at, we did have plans, intents and wants, dreams of getting a lift to appeal to especially the autocrossers. That, you know,
you guys have a few of you, because I know David Champion and a couple others are involved in it pretty heavily.
Yeah, and that's kind of
Champion's a member. The challenge is we don't have very good garage space.
No, we don't. And we found out the garage space we do have is actually over a basement. So putting in a hoist is not
the best
happen.
idea.
No. But yeah, so we've got 3D printers, laser cutter. We finally got the CNC router going. I'm training some people tonight on that. Table saw and space to actually do stuff.
Which is you guys are on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
That's Area 515. What is it? What is the page?
I'm not sure what our Facebook page is. I know our website is area515.org.
Okay, there you go.
I don't go on our Facebook very much, so
it looks like it's just Area 515, and then your logo says Area 515, obviously with the skyscape, the Des Moines skyscape. So
just Area 515.
So if you have any additional questions about that, or you have some interest in that, if you're listening,
We have open houses on Tuesday nights from 7 to 9. People can just drop by and see what's going on.
Say I want to join it. What is the monthly rate and all that?
The monthly rate is $40 a month now. If you pay a year at a time, you get a $50 discount. And again, what that gives you is 24-hour access to the space. You come in, get trained on the tools, and use the tools to make whatever you want to make.
Sounds really fun.
It seems like a really good deal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The one thing that we have a bit of a challenge selling that people don't get right away is that our space is useful, but what you're really getting is the community. You're really getting a group of people who, when you mention something like building Mule, and you may have no experience in how do I put together a vehicle, much less an electric vehicle, there are people hanging out there that know how to do that are willing to help you, that you say, oh, I want to make this thing. And we say, that's not really what you want to make. This is what you actually want to make. And then get you off and working on something that will be what you want and will be actually able to do what you need.
Yeah.
That sense of community and positive reinforcement is the type of thing that we are trying to develop in the car culture locally. It's something that we've talked about at length, and this sounds like what you guys have going there is really cool.
It is. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. So
if anybody wants to find you guys as far as Electric Dream Machine, should they go through Area 515 or what's...
No. Website is edm-ev.com. So that's Electric Dream Machine-electric vehicle. .com, because 3-letter domains were already taken. But yeah, and there you should be able to find a couple of pages that actually showcase both of these cars that we talked about today, including a 40-plus episode-long YouTube series of us building the Miata.
Oh, really?
Nightly
I
recaps.
haven't watched it, but I have heard about it. And I've seen it spoken of in multiple places.
Really?
On Facebook and stuff like that. Well, like mostly the Miata Performance Group, which I am a part of, just because I try to be a part of a lot of things. So I've seen and heard people talking about it there. So I've never actually watched it, though. I might have to sit down and try to watch it.
Best of luck to you. It's full of bad humor. And
have you listened
no rehearsal.
to this? This is all we
all we
is
do.
bad humor.
Yeah, I chuckle every time I see a new subscriber. It's like, oh, what a poor sap.
Well, we'll definitely we'll do a little feature on the cars, obviously, because we went out and drove them and took lots of pictures of them. So you'll be able to find that on all of our social media pages, 1010s Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, at the number 10 Tenths Podcast on Twitter. We'll see maybe if we can get something on Car Throttle.
I was going to say, I'm
of,
definitely going to put something on Car Throttle.
That'd be kind of interesting.
I feel like that community might embrace or might be very interested in these.
Yeah, just Car Throttle seems to celebrate the unique things, and I think this definitely would be up their alley. So, guys, thank you. It's been an extremely interesting conversation. I think I've learned a lot. It's been a great experience. Thanks for letting us drive your cars, and we're just very thankful for you guys stopping by. So,
thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, anytime. And if you want EV consultants going on with how it all goes into the car industry, I don't know. I wouldn't be opposed to coming on by again.
Absolutely.
Might have to do that. So if any of you guys have any questions on building EV cars, I'm sure you get a hold of us. We can get you in touch with both of these guys. I'm sure they'd be willing to help. They seem very helpful. So
awesome.
Let us know.
Thanks again.
Anybody out there wants to build something.
Yeah. Catch you guys next week. Thanks again.